Welcome to the Leathersellers presents Outside a Craft with me, Yusuf Osman. A podcast that seeks to rediscover the purpose and meaning of craft as we navigate complex issues that we face as individuals and together as a society. Hi Val, hi Neil. Welcome to the Outside a Craft podcast.
Thank you.
Hi.
Thanks for joining me today. I think this is a really important episode for me because it actually also marks 10 years of me almost in leatherworking, and I also find myself at another juncture with the craft, and in some ways this is a full circle moment for me, and so I have not really been this nervous before with any of the other guests, but I do feel a little bit more nervous today. And in some ways, I also feel a responsibility to the leathercraft community to get all of your information out, because you have been in the industry for how long?
Industry. 50 years. We started in 71, I think.
Yeah.
So 1971. So, yeah. But I think when we started, we didn't have that sense of being in the industry. It was just a way of making a living, really.
And I am not someone that uses AI, but I thought I'd download the app and I started asking it leathercraft questions. And your name actually comes up.
No,
Nobody
really?
else's name comes up. But when I asked ChatGPT, what are the best resources for leathercraft, your book comes up. Where to go learning for leathercraft, your book comes up. So I think it goes to show that impact that you have had on this industry. When I ask about top leatherworkers, your name comes up. And there's not much information because it's obviously such a niche. So I think the fact that it recognizes both of you and your book is testament to the impact that you've had on leatherworkers all over the world.
It was being around a long time, it does help.
But how do you feel about that? Do you find it something that you think about?
I feel proud. I think, and we've tried to be true. I think we've tried in our professional lives and our own lives, really. We've tried to be honest and true people. And I think we've approached leatherwork in that same way of, in doing it ourselves to try and do things as well as we can, use good materials, all those things, and have integrity. I think integrity is such an important word. And I think it's, so we've tried to live our lives and not be different people at work, which is our leatherwork, and in our personal lives. And I think that was one of the reasons why we started, really. I don't know what you'll say, Neil, but I was in a job that I didn't like, but I earned money. And I knew that during the day I had to have certain values because I was in an organisation, and then I had to be another person in my personal life. And I don't think you can do that without damage for too long. And I wanted to be creative and I wanted to make things. So that was the motivation, really. I wanted to find a way, we both did, of making an honest living and being true to ourselves as people.
And would you say the same?
Yeah, no, it's exactly what happened. So we didn't think of it as a craft to begin with at all. So we kind of grew into that after a while. So it was a way of becoming self-employed. So we started, we tried selling things wholesale. That didn't work for a year. And then we had an opportunity of opening a small shop in Bristol. It was a boutique, It was
1971 this was.
And we had talented friends, so they did the signage and the artwork and so on. And we started in partnership with Valerie's brother. They were doing clothes. We had a tiny little leather workshop upstairs. But it was great because it gave us a start. We were able to make something, take it downstairs and get a reaction straight away. And
so they were very simple things. And it was about the motivation was to make a living, was to sell things, and then get feedback and then learn more and more. And I think a turning point, maybe jumping too far really, but when we saw the Museum of Leathercraft, that amazing collection, first of all it was in Walsall and then it was in Northampton, and we went to visit it, and the keeper of the collection allowed us into the store, and he allowed us to handle things that were beautiful. And there is something amazing about being able to look at something that was made by human hands, by hand. And the result was incredible. And it sort of set the bar for me, I think it did for you, that they could make those things in the 18th, 17th century. Why can't we? And it wasn't happening really. Things were being mass-produced, the leathers were being dumbed down and everything. So we started our journey of our self-education. So that's what we are. We're self-educated. But at the same time, we were always open to going to visit people, a saddler or a bookbinder, or whoever who seemed to be really good at what they did, and ask with some kind of humility, will you show me how you do that? So the saddler locally showed me how to stitch. I came back. The first thing I did was show Neil. We were so excited because we could now hand stitch. So that was like, his grandfather had been a saddler, a harness maker, his father, he was a saddler. He passed it on to us. We pass it on to others. So it's like a continuation of that knowledge, really.
I think because you've had such a long time as craftspeople, it would be really interesting to hear what you were doing before, because the sentiment that you share is something that is common still as a thread, that people are unhappy in their jobs and they want to do something creative. And I think it's quite refreshing to hear that, because we also get told now that we're being a bit arrogant, but this has been a common human sentiment. That people, as you say, it's quite hard to do a job and hold two different parts of yourself without causing damage. I think that's a really interesting way of looking at it, because we can't separate our parts of ourselves without causing damage, whatever those parts are. And I think that's a really interesting way of thinking about coming into craft as a putting together of the parts of ourselves. So prior to starting out in craft, were both of you working in jobs that you didn't like? What were you doing?
We had proper jobs. Like, I was working for Yellow Pages, I think. Really, mindless kind of job. I didn't know what you had, all sorts of jobs, hadn't you?
Yeah, well, I was, I still am a bit dyslexic, so at school it wasn't really recognised. So I left as soon as I could. So at 15, I was gone. Apprentice electrician for 2 years. That didn't work out because the guy I was apprentice with, who was a couple of years older, was a musician. I was interested in music. And then we kind of gradually, we got a flat together, and then we started playing the folk clubs, and gradually we just stopped going into work. That was the end of, that section. So I go home, Mum, Dad, can I come back here for a while? Cause I got and then I get jobs as a gardener. I'm doing gardening for a couple of years, and then we had about a year off just experimenting, didn't we?
Well, we met during this. We'd met when I was about 16, because we were, young people in the late 60s, and Saturday night was wandering the streets looking for people who would have parties, because their parents had gone out, so they would then have a party.
And this was in Bristol?
This was in Bristol. And we met on the street, I think, wandering about.
So you knew that Neil was on the dark side.
But it's all very, very innocent and really rather lovely, wasn't it? And we kind of met, and then we got together. I was still at school.
Well, you invited us to your school to do a concert.
I did. I did, much to the horror of my headmaster. So they came and they did. Yeah, they did music. That's right, you did. I remember that now, which was really good. So that's how we got together. So we've been together for so long, I can't remember. really.
But you
Over
met
50
when you were
years.
16.
Yeah, we met when we were
that's
16.
lovely.
We started going out more formally when I was 17. But then, I was supposed to go to college, but I didn't because I was disillusioned by the whole kind of machine of, grammar school. You had to either go to university or college. So I kind of didn't do that. And then I just got a series of jobs. And I did this job at Yellow Pages, and then I got a job with the Wages Inspectorate. So I was a civil servant for a while. But while I was doing those jobs, I was making things in my lunch hours. So I would be making bead necklaces or chokers and selling them to the girls in the office or whatever. So that's kind of, wasn't it? And then there was a place near where I lived that sold leather. It was called English Leather. And I bought some leather and we designed some bags, didn't we? They were dreadful. And
they were quite well made. But they were not attractive.
The design was just terrible and the leather was awful. And we made these bags and I got on the bus and I went to Weston-super-Mare and I sold them to a shop. We were so excited, weren't we? I bet they're still on the shelf. And, so we had some hard cash, didn't we? And then a very extraordinary thing happened. We were walking down Park Street in Bristol, which is quite a well-known street, and there was a shop that sold
Western clothes, sort of jeans and jackets from America.
And there was a gun belt, a Western gun belt, and it was all carved, like the cowboy stuff. And we thought this was amazing. So this was like early 1970-ish probably, and we went in and we found out that the man who had made them lived near me. So we went to see him, didn't we? Lovely guy. And we said, where did you get the tools? How did you do it? Where did you get the leather? And again, he, if you're open, and people on the whole, I find really open and kind. And he told us everything we needed to know. So we started making carved and decorated things, and we got the tools from America, and there was no one around doing that kind of work at that time.
In the UK
they were very labour intensive, and this is what Neil was saying. It was obvious that we couldn't make things and sell to shops because of their markup. The only way we could do this was to open a shop of our own. I mean, we were like 19, 20, we're like, we believe in this thing, but if you don't know what to do, just get on with it, just find out.
If no one tells you not to do it, you can do it.
So we just did it.
Did you think of yourself as being entrepreneurial? Or
No,
you just
we didn't.
No,
Not
but
really.
it was the 1970s, so it's hard to imagine now, but there was a certain energy around. It was alternative energy, alternative food, alternative medicine. There was a big kind of movement.
Countercultural movement.
Quite positive, really. It was quite can-do,
Yeah, the culture wasn't
it?
so split into lots of pieces. So what happened was, because we had to get the leather from Connolly Brothers in London, so we could go on for a long time like this. But anyway, so we go to London, right? And we didn't have a car, so Valerie's brother takes us. We buy the leather from Connolly, lovely natural hide. And we said, what's the fuss about King's Road? Let's go and take a look.
We do it all about it.
So we walk down King's Road, the whole length. We take it in. Granny takes a trip, Cadillac cars sticking out through the fashion, and the music was all of a piece. It was quite exciting. But when we got to the end, we said, well, the quality's not great. We could do this in Bristol.
We could do this.
So naively, we thought, let's open a boutique in Bristol.
So I went to the council,
and this was in the 70s.
Bristol Council, and I said, have you got any shops to let? And they said, well, yeah, we've got these few. And they showed us a few, and we went to look at a couple. Anyway, there was a couple in this street where we opened, and we knew it was the right place. And it was so cheap, I can't tell you. It was £25 a month. And it was a 3-storey building in the centre of Bristol. They were condemned, this is true.
They're still there.
It's a minor detail. But we opened our shop, and that was, the beginning, really, wasn't it?
It was a start for us, definitely.
We learned a lot.
You were in your 19 or 20 then?
Yeah, about 20 by then, aren't we?
Yeah, we were.
So that was okay for a couple of years. But then we realised there was the first Bristol riots.
And St Paul's.
Yeah, and also the buses were stopping outside and the fumes were coming into the shop. We was kind of think.
It was all getting a little bit.
And there's this romantic idea that craft is better practiced in the country. It's not strictly true, of course, but you can practice craft in a city just as well. But it was part of that romantic idea. So we started looking around. We said, we need to move out of here. And so we left the business to Valerie's brother.
Yeah.
We walked away from that, and we wanted to find a workshop in the countryside.
And what were you... Well, you said that you learned hand stitching later on. So the first bags that you made, how did you...
They were laced,
Yeah.
But we did kind of like Spanish thonging. We did kind of like quite intricate braiding around them. So we did some running stitch stuff, but then that...
And how did you learn that, though?
Books, really.
Was,
Books.
There was no
and again,
Instagram.
I believe in all that. You could apply yourself, can't you, to it.
Yeah.
And then 1974, we moved to Tetbury. We won't go into how we ended up in Tetbury, but then we were still making these kind of things, which are kind of fashion, still fashion. But that, like finding the Museum of Leathercraft and visiting that collection, and then becoming much more aware of like leather, the history of leather.
The tradition of leatherworking.
Because before it had been a means to make a living, and it was very fashion orientated.
Yes.
And we then recognised that. And it was then we started to learn about the hand stitching and became much more aware of the craft.
The craft and the tradition.
Yeah.
So that was sort of a pivotal moment in...
Definitely.
I think so.
Yeah.
In you taking this on as something. But I suppose you didn't know at that point that you had taken it on. It just had brought about a new level, a deeper level of fascination, right?
Yeah. It did. And we were just about managing to make a living. We didn't have much money, but it was never about the money. It was all about
it wasn't really about a proper business, really. It's more of a lifestyle, because people that we knew who had started out at the same time with us in leatherworking, they quite quickly went to production. So then they borrow money to buy machines, and then to keep the payment up, they had to make more. And in the end, they weren't actually, they didn't employ someone. In the end, they were managing a company and not making. And with us, it was all about the making always.
Yeah, that wasn't what
That's
we
when we
wanted.
decided to keep to hand stitching only, no machinery.
Yeah, I think this is where I am at with my journey.
Right.
And I think, I don't know where this information comes from, but when you were doing it, obviously you had people around, different types of craftspeople in different industries that you could speak with and see what they were doing. But now we have that, but on such a global scale through Instagram.
Yeah, sure.
Whereas when you were going and speaking with people, you'd get, I guess, more often than not, a sort of honest understanding of what was going on. Today, you cannot get an honest understanding of what is behind the people who are in craft. You don't know if they're making any money. You don't know anything about how their business is structured.
No.
And so
true.
I think when I started out and I came to you almost 10 years ago now, I remember it very well, in November 2014.
Right.
And I had actually been thinking about it for a couple of years before, and I didn't know this, but I was clearing out some boxes recently, and I have the copy of the book that I purchased from you when I came to that workshop. But then I found that a year before I had purchased a copy of that book from Amazon, which you had also signed, but I had just put it away because I thought it was inaccessible to me. So it's interesting how I had already thought about it.
Yeah, you're going along the road.
I was going along the path.
Yeah.
And then because anybody who's tried to come and learn from you knows that when you put your courses up, they go pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So I think I must have just emailed you, and I think you had a space free, or you'd had a cancellation or something like this. And I said, okay, I'll take it. Because there aren't many ways to learn. I mean, there are more so now, but 10 years ago, there weren't really anywhere to learn leathercraft.
No.
And investment-wise, it's more of an investment than, say, doing a course in sewing or something like this. So it's something that I guess I was aware of, but to come to Tetbury, to stay somewhere, to
It's big. It's a big
it's
deal.
more of a big deal. I remember it then. It was a big deal for me too.
Yeah, it would have
It's
been,
quite a cultural shock for people, actually.
Is it?
Oh, yeah. And we still get people and they're kind of, whoa, this little town with these houses made of stone.
Everyone thinks we're like, 3 hours away. Yeah, it's an hour and a half on the train, So.
Yeah. I really loved it, but it is still this... it still was a commitment, I remember.
Yeah.
Oh, it's an investment for you, absolutely.
Because it is quite a
the
lot
bed
of
and
money.
breakfast,
I
of
remember when you came on, because your thing right from the very beginning was colour.
I was thinking
threads
about it.
or coloured leather.
I remember.
And I always go with the flow, don't I?
Yeah,
I go with it. I try not to impose what my aesthetic is. I try and allow people to express their own. And you would contrast and clash colours that I would go, whoa.
Yeah.
And actually, that's really interesting because you went on and that's become your thing.
Yeah, it's still what I do.
Yeah.
But I remember it as well, that was straight away I didn't go
out
for...
of our comfort zone. We were happy with browns. Various shades of brown.
Brown and tan.
But I was looking through the photos, but I didn't choose any of those right from the beginning.
No.
So I thought that, I have photos obviously of the things that I made
that
there.
you made, yeah.
But it was interesting that I gravitated. Actually, I made things out of goat skins, and it was the colourful goat skins right from the beginning. So I think that, and I still use goat skins primarily.
Yeah, they're lovely leather.
What I do, but I find it interesting that it was my first thing. So, in terms of me doing that course, then it was something that, when people say, do you think you found the craft or did the craft find you? I would say that maybe the material found me, because I remember that I had been doing things before also. I had done many things because I was unhappy with my education, with my job. And in London, I'd taken many courses doing many crafts. But I remember it still very clearly, or rather I should say I feel it very clearly, that when I came to your workshop, when I walked in that morning and I felt the energy of both of you, the energy that's stored in your workshop, and when I saw those materials, that same captivation is still with me today. That's my motivation. And it was then too. But going back to the question, what I am realizing now is that when I started and when I came to visit you, the thing that captivated me was the integrity that you have in your workshop, which is, it's about the materials, it's about the craft, it's about having a lifestyle and an honest way of living and being. But then when I came back and you start working and you start to figure out your own path, then there's all this conflicting advice, and some of it comes from within the industry and from within people trying to help craftspeople, which is that you're not going to be able to make money by doing craft in the old way. And so there is this pressure of buying machines, doing this and doing that. And I followed those things because I was initially hand sewing my bags. And again, I'm not saying that this is right for everyone, but for me, I guess along the way, over these 10 years, I forgot why I fell in love with the craft and the material when I came to see you. And it was because of the craft. It was because of the hand stitching. So one of the reasons why I'm at this juncture is because I realized that I have been working to take the craft out because I was told that the craft is not going to make you the money. And of course, as you quite rightly say, once you buy the machine, what is the next logical step? You make things. It's not so that you can slow down. There's never, once you go onto the treadmill, there's no slowing down because then you buy a machine so that you can make things faster, so that you can make more things, so that you have to sell more things, so that you then employ someone to help you make more things. That is the path. There's no way of saying, I've got a sewing machine, so I'm just going to make 4 things now. Well, then you might as well hand stitch. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
sure.
I think that's where I'm at, which is realizing that I've pursued this path because I love the craft, and then I'm taking the enjoyable bits out. And I want to slow down.
I'm quite interested in what you were saying about the advice you were given by people. And I think it's like kind of beware, buyer beware almost, to kind of be very, we all have to be quite careful of the people we listen to. and the reasons why they counsel us in certain ways. Because I know when we first started, one of the big things people said, well, what if you fail? And we were young and we said, well, so what? Because we've got the experience, it doesn't really matter. But there was a big thing about failure and other people's idea of success, what would make you successful. And they measure it in a different way. So I think you've got to be so careful of the people you do listen to and who do give you advice, so say.
Yeah,
I think it's really important.
Yeah, if you follow your heart and not your head, you can't go wrong. That's what it comes down to, simple thing like that.
Would you say that's what you've done throughout your career? And obviously you must be good at it now, but in the beginning when you received advice or people tried to scare you with their worries about what you were doing, how did you manage that?
I think we were going too fast.
We were quite stubborn though too.
Well,
we're quite single-minded, weren't we?
Yeah. But I think we were everything was happening quite quickly, condensed into quite a few short years. Like the move from Bristol and city life and move to the countryside, and we're more aware of leather as a continual tradition going back to as far as humanity's been around. And then we said, well, what we were making in Bristol, we can't make here because there's not a market for it. So we thought, well, how can we start selling direct? And someone knocked on the workshop door one day, a jeweler, and he said, I'm starting a Craftsmans Market. There were no Craftsmans Markets, right? And he'd come from somewhere like Ibiza or something. So they were used to a market tradition. And he said, I'm going to start a Craftsmans Market in Stroud, and would you like to join? So there are about 12 of us and different crafts. And we started this market and we got a result, starting to get a result. And it was interesting, but it was the wrong day.
It was the wrong town and the wrong day.
In those days, they had early closing days, which was very strange. So they were shut Thursday afternoons. So the morning was great, the afternoon was dead. So we thought, this is a great idea. Let's see if we can take it elsewhere. So we started driving around, and we found in Cirencester, which is the main market town, there was a big hall which they weren't really using, occasional Friday night dance. So we hired it, and we invited about
20 craftspeople. We hired it for 3 Saturdays, like the first and third Saturday of the month, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And we booked it for 3.
But we were very strict. We said, you can't buy in things. Everything you show has got to be made by you. You must be behind the stall personally, But it was a success right from the start. And that was our main income for about the first 10 years. And building up clients and people who were interested in our work. And all kinds of people come into the market town. And it quickly became a venue that people took into their Saturday shopping. They'd go and so on.
And the idea of direct, I think, sort of being able to have that conversation with a maker and could you make this? And so
then we start taking commissions.
And we've got customers still that we met then. That's like nearly 50 years ago. It was 75.
1975
we started in Cirencester. And a lot of those people established their business, and it's still going. It's still going. It'll be 50 years next year.
We after 10 years we had a break. We were off and away with enough work, and then we came back briefly a few years later, didn't we? Just for a short period.
Yeah, they asked us back, but we just did it for a while. But then we joined the Gloucestershire Guild of Craftsmen, didn't we?
Yes.
Because it is, there is this thing about a community, because you're at Cockpit, aren't you? And we've got our workshop in Tetbury, but we don't have like other people around us, it's just us really. So we joined the Gloucestershire Guild of Craftsmen, which is a group of makers doing all sorts of crafts, but they're all professional and they know what they're doing, and that's been very good, hasn't it?
Oh yeah, that was really, really good.
Good.
Your story really reminds me of the guest that we had in the second episode, and there's a fearlessness. I don't know if you felt fear when you were doing it, but there's a fearlessness in your story, which also I got from Uzo, and he was the same way. And he says that he just got some leather, he was making things, it was always about the making. He didn't think about anything. He just made the things, took them to market, made his way. He didn't learn from anyone, he didn't join any studio or anything like that. He just got to making because making was the important thing. He didn't try to finesse his thing. He was like, this is where I'm starting. I'm going to start selling stuff straight away. And then we're going to just improve as we go, because it is a journey. And whether you like it or not, wherever you start, you're not going to end up there. So you'll always be continually improving or developing, hopefully. So I think it's really inspirational to hear that again, because as I said, I think I have got lost through all of the different things that I've been hearing and taking them on, and then losing my own sense of what I wanted to do within that. I
think too, the fact that there's two of us working together, because I think when you're on your own, it's all very well me saying, about advice, but we advise each other. So we discuss things, we mull over things, and we come to an agreement. Because obviously we can't have different values, because it wouldn't work personally or in our working life, because that's what we are. We're a couple, aren't we? But we also work together. But I think if you're an individual working on your own, that is much harder.
I think it's really difficult, and I didn't realize it, but I know that some of the changes that I want to make moving forward are that I don't want to work on my own. And it's been for multiple reasons that are sort of out of my control in a way, but I started on my own. I think when it's a hobby and you have another job, it's easy to get by because you have this thing that you're fighting against. And so the time that you spend with your hobby is really beautiful because it's that moment where it's your escape and it's your way out.
It's your therapy almost.
And there isn't the same pressure to make it into a living. But I started it on my own in a studio full time in 2019, which was only, of course, a year before COVID. So really, I haven't fully got to grasp with what was going on, because the first year is always hectic, trying to make things work, trying to get an income coming through, which I did through workshops, which was something that you also advised. And also you passed me that opportunity, which I still have today, where I'm teaching at the school. And then, of course, like everyone, we were all on our own, or, to a greater or lesser degree, we were all on our own during COVID.
We're trying to deal with that.
So it was not... So I didn't necessarily know that I was on my own because the whole world was on their own. So I was quite happy to be on my own in my studio because I thought, great, now I don't have the pressures of trying to make money. I can just focus on my craft. And so it became actually quite an unhealthy 3 years. It didn't feel like it at the time. But when there was nothing else to do, I was in my studio on my own all the time. And when you don't know the feelings that you're dealing with because the world is upside down.
You're not getting any feedback.
Right.
Yeah, we know we're not meant to be on our own.
Yeah. And I think now I realise that this is not something that I want. So the next place that I would move to will be something, or the project that I do will be something that involves other people. I didn't realise how important actually it is.
You enjoyed running the workshops?
The workshops, I did
enjoy them.
I did enjoy them, but again, I think doing it on my own is not something that I want to do, because you still have the other things to do, right?
Yeah, sure.
And it's really quite challenging, as you quite know, to teach.
It is. I mean, when listening to you, there is the option too of collaboration, like with furniture or with textile people or people who are doing other crafts. It's not necessarily you have to work with someone who's doing leatherwork, but you could think about that as a possible link up.
Something complementary.
But I mean, we've not touched on it yet, but we got to a point when, I don't know when it was, 1989, 99, approached by a publisher because there wasn't a book. And that's when, the book was born in a way. Yeah. And I'd never written, why? I mean, I've never written anything. Yeah, I could have a go at this. Why not? So I wrote this book, and it took me a long time because I'd never written anything. And then when the book came out, there was obviously a hunger. And I think, again, it's going back to when I wrote it, and I said in the introduction, it's the book I wished I'd had when I started. So it was about paring things down to the most important things you need to know. It's about the materials you need, the tools you need, and some projects to progress and to take you through. And that's when the teaching demand started. Right. And really, as a result of the teaching, we did start to earn more money because I decided that it would, I had honed the craft. We'd learned all this over the years. And there is something culturally about if people get something for cheap, then it's cheap. So you have to value things properly. So we did. We did cost them so that when people have to make an investment in it, and it is their training, and it made it a professional thing. And that's really what we've tried to do through all the 25, 30 years of doing the teaching, is to try and get people to come. Some people, it is a therapy. It is something they're never going to take it up for as a living. That's fine. They're enjoying it. But there are a big chunk of those people who have gone on to, like you, to set up and make a living from it. And I think it's because from the beginning I tried to instill, and I don't know if I succeeded with a lot of the people, but that you have to have a professional approach to it. And you have to be serious about doing it as well as you can. And I've been quite strict, really, as a teacher, I think. Yes. I use quite a lot of humour, but I think I am quite uncompromising sometimes. No, that won't do. You take that apart, you know. And I think that's been the right approach for me as a teacher. And obviously I would say this, wouldn't I? But for them as people who are doing the training.
I think, as I've attended, I think three or four workshops with you, different ones, and I don't think that you say anything uncompromising, but I think it's your it's the value, it's your values, and that comes throughout, because I think you're so committed, both of you, to every little thing that you do, that when you teach us, that's certainly what I picked up as well, that I'm also going to be in a professional way and in an uncompromising way, because that's how you approach your own work. So it's not, I don't think it was necessarily by what you said, but it's your own approach. And I think that shows through, because as you quite rightly said, the way you are in your life, the way you are in your work, and the way that you teach is all the same. So of course, if that's how you believe those are your values, then that comes through in your teaching, because you're not another person when you're teaching. It's the same. And I do remember that in the beginning, you did encourage me to take it seriously and to make some wallets and sell it. I think there was always been that element of just do this, or just make some belts, just go for it, just make the things and do it. And I remember that. Good. And that's what got me going right from the beginning, because it wasn't something that you come and just sort of come and learn and throw it away. It was we respond serious.
Yeah, because you have to respond to the people who come on the course. So you tune what you're doing with them. So you were quite serious about the idea of it, and then other people, if they want to do it as a hobby, that's absolutely fine, because they get the feedback they want from it, which is nothing wrong with that. And then you get people that want to do freer work, and then other people that want to do highly regulated work, which is more risky. The more the more regulated the work is, the higher the risk, and you take it to different kind of level and standard, and that's fine too. But one's not better than the other. Really, it's just what suits the people, you know. So
as long as people are making.
Yeah, making. Yeah, that's the key. Lots of making, as much as you can do.
I think over the years, I've become more relaxed in a creative way with the directions people are going. I mean, you get horrified sometimes. You come in at what I'm helping. I'm because I've become a facilitator and an enabler. So I want people to follow through their ideas, even though I might feel I'm not quite sure about this. But it's their idea, and I'm going to try and help them realize that. And that's given me a lot back, because I can then see what the result of that is. So I've learned a lot from you students, people that have come for the training. So it's a two-way street. Definitely. Actually.
Teaching is definitely.
You must find that with your teaching, because people come up with an idea. You think, I'm not sure about that. Yeah, let's just try it out, and it's been really good.
I think teaching, as you said, being on your own, you don't get that feedback. Of course, you get the feedback from each other, but teaching is definitely a mirror, because you share your passion and then it's reflected back. And so then for me, I get reminded about my own passion, because when you're on your own, actually, that's probably what carried me through, was doing a lot of teaching in those years. And then throughout COVID, when we could, having the people in who were still quite eager to do things.
More than certain,
so I think that what carried me through, because it's difficult for you to gauge your own passion, but when you share it in that confined space, in those confined moments, then you realize that spark of passion that you've passed on to people, and they get so excited by it, then you see it reflected back at you. That then tells you what you've actually done in that moment. So that's what I've got from that. And it also helps, it's helped me to hone the things that I'm passionate about, and I'm realized now that those are the craft and also the material. It is leather that I am passionate about. And I think it's really interesting, leathercraft. Maybe other people in other crafts may disagree with me, but I think that when we talk about leather and when we talk about craft, we can really use them as vehicles to discuss quite a lot of the problems that we are going through in society today and personally. You can't really do it with another material. What other material connects you to farming, to food, to land, to the climate crisis, to material use, and then mix that in with craft to how we're living our life? No, I don't think any other material could connect you for human history, all of those things, and all of this, quite a lot of the systems that we are in today.
You're right.
You can discuss all of that through these two topics, and you can kind of sit on this couch and we can solve all of the world's problems just through discussing all of these things
wish
through
that
leather.
Were true. We could have a go at it. That's right.
I think, but it's true, don't you think?
Yeah, no, absolutely. In fact, we wouldn't have got by in certain circumstances without it. In the Saxon period, for instance, it was essential for daily life. You know, that you get sayings from Saxon period like, you know, beat the dog that eats leather. And I wouldn't like to go through winter without the craft of the leather worker. We relied on it, you know.
What kind of things did we rely on it for back then, do you know?
Oh, well, clothing, shoes, just strapping. You can't pull a plough with a braided wool harness. You know, it was always going to be leather. Yeah. So it was used in every kind of way.
I do get people on the courses sometimes, and their working life is quite intellectual. So they might say things like, "Well, I've never been very good with my hands. That's why I've come on the course," kind of thing. And it's trying to get their heads out of it and just to say, Just allow your hands, get your head away, don't analyse it. Stop thinking about it. Just do what I've shown you and let your hands learn and watch. And gradually this kind of realisation is that their body can do things, their hands can do things. They can do independent things. They can hold their oar and the needle and do something.
The motor skills that
it's
they've
amazing.
left behind.
It's such a simple thing, and then they're off really, and they've let that go. That they are perfectly capable of doing things with their hands, and it's the result of the education system as well.
Well,
isn't it?
It's usually middle-aged men who are quite academic. They're the worst to teach because they want to know, how does this work?
Analyse it. Explain it to me. I'd say no.
No. You tell them, that's when you get strict. You say, no, just do it. Do
it.
Do what I say.
You can only find out some things you can only discover by doing them.
Yeah.
And that's all. That's
it's
craft,
very, very interesting. I mean, talking about materials and about what is real and what isn't real. And I think about social media, and I think the age, like when we started, obviously there was nothing like that. It was about communicating with people. You eyeballed people, didn't you? You met them. You might speak to them on the phone.
Even though some of the relationships might have been cultivated on social media, what I've found is that actually nothing beats just going and arranging a meeting with someone and having a conversation and creating an opportunity. I think for many of us, it does take a toll because, I mean, I really would love to just be able to focus on the making and know that I've created a business where those leads would come to me and those relationships are there. But unfortunately, we have to spend a lot of time on social media. And it's difficult to know how to make a business thrive without it.
I suppose what I'm counselling in a way is to be cautious, to remain true to yourself and not become a performer.
Yeah.
Not to do the performance for the marketplace out there. It's to try and hold on to who you really are and let that really come across.
Yeah. And because it is really easy to then chase the followers, chase the likes, chase the performative aspect of it rather than stick to your craft. And then you end up doing that rather than the thing that you set out to do, which was to make.
Yeah, absolutely. It all comes back to the making. That's the heartbeat that runs through craft, making. Because it's the effect it has on you. So people say to us, you've made something and they really admire it and everything. And for us, it's the business of the making, is the pleasure. We get as much from the making as we do from the finished fine object. The rhythms in a quiet workshop, and everything.
When you're in the zone, aren't you? Because you're in the project, and people,
that's the reward.
We don't necessarily listen to music. We don't listen to the radio. It's quite quiet. We might even talk occasionally, not very often. But we're in and I'm focusing on the stitch, and you're watching how that's going, and you're aware of the whole thing. And because life is so distracting, isn't it? There's all this stuff, and it is so distracting. And I think that takes away from us being in that moment. We talked about this, being in the moment of what you're doing. You're really, really there. And if you are really, really there when you're making something, it shows in the final piece.
And it has an effect on you as a person as well.
Yeah.
There's an expression that as soon as you're born, you're a moving target for the world. And that's very true.
If you can find those moments and create those moments where you stay still, then I guess you're creating that space for yourself.
But it's not necessarily meditative, but it can be. But it's a bit bigger than that, really.
What do you mean?
Well, it's because you're going to share it. What you make is shared, or you're making something with someone as a commission. So it's not self-indulgent. It's just the process that you go through.
And it's interesting because when I've completed a piece, my relationship with it almost is finished.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask.
That's what the difference between a professional and someone who isn't.
Yeah, because that's it. I've done it now.
Everything.
Yeah, I sell it because it's finished, and then I can go on to the next piece, and I can see what might be improved, or I could. I get another idea, and I'm off on that one, really.
So you're not attached to the final piece once it's done?
No, I'm terrible, really, isn't it?
No, I'm the same. But that's because I'm in the moment and I want to create the thing, but once it's done,
that's good.
I know some people can't. Yeah. Some people can't let go of their object.
Yeah, you go through stages, and you went through the stage probably early on of wanting to hang on to something because it was, an achievement and it was good and you liked it hanging around. But you have to move on, and because you're making a living, you've got to. Once the piece is gone, then you've got the opportunity to make a new piece, haven't you?
But I don't think it's any more difficult now than it was when we started.
Well,
actually,
different
it's just different. It's just different. But I think that
I mean, our standards were pretty low. When we started,
of the items you made, you mean?
No, the life standards.
Right.
So we had no money for 20 years at least. Literally no money at all, just eking a living. But
what is your definition of success, and at what point did you realize that you were successful?
Well, not
when people start telling you.
Yeah, not having to worry about, paying the mortgage or having enough money. Just being able to make a living and feel sort of not having that stress, actually, is good. I don't know that I feel successful. I don't know if that's something. I don't know. I don't know if I even...
No, but that is the point,
of myself.
I mean, it is the point. Is it something that you need validation from outside in order to tell you're successful, or do you need to know it? One's a kind of outside fact, and the other one's an understanding in yourself that you've probably got close to achieving sometimes what your original aim was.
I mean, it's interesting sometimes when I've set myself a challenging design idea and I'm working on it, and there's always a moment of, oh my God, what have I taken on? Is this going to work? Is this... And then carrying on through that and just seeing, and it's this kind of fearlessness in a way. You've just got to carry on. Just see what's the worst that can happen. I say that to myself a lot. What's the worst that can happen? No one's going to die, because it's just a bag. It's just a thing, so calm down. And usually it all works out okay. But I think even now, with all the experience I have, I still get those moments when I've designed something and I'm making something, and there are moments within that making process when I doubt, when I question, and I've got to pick myself up and I've got to take myself through that. So no matter what experience you've got, I think that still happens.
No, the day that you didn't, it would mean that you've become, this sort of...
complacent, or...
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that's reassuring then.
That's the process of life, right? And then you experience that over and over again, and it's character building as well. It's very difficult. I find it quite stressful sometimes.
Life's not easy.
Life is
but then it's like, why am I putting myself through this time and time again with a new project?
Yeah.
But I think it's really interesting that you haven't really looked at success, because again, and I see this at Cockpit, and I see this time and time again, when people like something, when people love a craft, we get given all this advice about how we must be and what is our definition of success. Sure. And what I've listened to today, what I've heard you say, is that maybe you thought about it, but really you've just gone on and made things. You've just focused on the making and let that drive you through. And the success has come whether it's externally validated, even if you may not see it internally, right? But it's there. It's happened as a result of you focusing on the thing that you are passionate about and the thing that you love and the thing that you want to build. And I think that's a really interesting way of people moving forward when they decide to find a craft, is maybe not to worry about the success, maybe not to worry about where the money's going to come from and how you're going to do it.
No, if you're always checking your phone every half an hour, you're not going to really get into the job in hand.
And not worry about what kind of brand you want or where you want to be or all of these things. Just do the work. You start thinking about all these things and you think, I don't know, because I've not done enough work to know. And I think it's refreshing to think that you can just focus on the work, because we get told that you can't just focus on the work. And that's not to say that we don't need to do the generation of leads and business, because of course you've done that. You know, you've created the market, you've joined the guild, you've created a workshop, you've created products, you've done the work, but the work is the work and not this other stuff that we're told that we need to know before we start doing the work. What would be your advice to anyone starting out now?
Do it.
Doing leathercraft.
Just do it, really. You know, don't... if you sort of learn what you can and do as much practicing and stay critical of what you're doing and just take a risk. I mean, this is not a rehearsal, is it? Life is not a rehearsal. This is it. So go for it.
Thank you for listening to Outsider Craft with Yusuf Osman. My guests today were Valerie Michael and Neil MacGregor. Keep the conversation going with me on Instagram @Yusico and find out more about Valerie and Neil at macgregorandmichael.com.